Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I'm sorry for getting here in the very last second because I was downstairs when I realized that I didn't have my pen drive, so I didn't drive home. I flew home and came back. Okay, but just in time, and we're going to talk about hope today, and I hope you enjoy it. And we're going to talk about hope, and I just want to say that it's going to be, I've been listening to a lot of lectures and in the Spiritist movement, and I may confess that I have been missing Allan Kardec. And so when friends from Boston asked me to speak about hope in the midst of chaos in October, I started to think about what I would say. And what came to me is, which other place can I find hope better than the works of Allan Kardec, and more particularly the gospel? And so I pretty much reread the gospel in the last weeks, and it was a very interesting experience because I was sharing with Andrea another day, I'm still a little short of breath, with Andrea another day, that as I read the gospel, I was just like, I felt myself so excited as if I was reading it for the first time. And I was like, oh my God, this is so incredibly precious. And then I also thought, like, how contemporary Kardec is and how all these things that he talks about can be so powerful and help us so much in dealing with today's illusion of chaos. And so hopefully what I really hope to do today is to inspire you to read the gospel, is to inspire you to seek the courses that we offer. And we'll be starting a whole new series of courses in the next year. And so it's not much of a lecture, but we will read the gospel together today. And a particular part of the Spirit's book that also help us to have hope in today's times. But let me start with this little video.
People going hungry today. I know that this year 1 million people will commit suicide. It's 1 every 40 seconds. I know today there are 120 million slaves, and I've met sex slaves, and I've seen the top of the pyramid as far as business and met the billionaires. I've met bankers, and I've also met orphans. We're all looking for something. We're all looking for hope. Hope you can't just have just because you were born with hope. No, we're born with pain. We're born and live through difficulties. And in our life, my parents always taught me that even though we don't know why I was born this way, that we have a choice. Either to be angry for what we don't have, or be thankful for what we do have. The power of that choice was the first thing that I had to overcome and decide for myself.
Why would the farmer put the plow in the ground in the spring if he couldn't see the vision of the harvest when the summer is finished? Is it possible to see the finished harvest? And the answer is yes. We do that simply by faith. Key phrase, faith is the ability to see things that don't yet exist. And that's how things exist. How did this hotel get here? Someone saw it while the property was vacant. You say, well, is it possible to see this hotel when it isn't here? And the answer is yes, of course. If somebody cannot see it when it is not here, then it will never be here. So it's possible to see things that don't yet exist.
I met a high school teacher who one day changed my life. I was waiting on another student, and when he came in, he said to me, young man, go to the board and write what I'm about to tell you. And I said, I can't do that, sir. He said, why not? I said, I'm not one of your students. He said, it doesn't matter, follow my directions down. I said, I can't do that, sir. He said, why not? I said, because I'm educable mentally retarded. And he came from behind his desk and he looked at me. He said, don't ever say that again. Someone's opinion of you does not have to become your reality.
Just do what you love, you know? Don't worry about anything else. Don't worry about money. Don't worry about anything. Just be kind to everyone and do what you love. As long as you're not hurting anybody else, as long as you're being kind to people and you're doing what you love, only good things can come of it.
I think the greatest of people in society carved niches that represented the unique expression of their combination of talents. I'm privileged and I don't take a day for granted.
I hope you are inspired to know that if I can dream big, then so can you. There are no walls. Find your peace, and you'll make your walls doors.
Why would the farmer put the plow in the ground in the spring if he couldn't see the vision of the harvest when the summer is finished? Is it possible to see the finished harvest? And the answer is yes. We do that simply by faith. Key phrase: faith is the ability to see things that yet don't exist, and that's how things exist. That's pretty incredible. And that's also very much in line with the gospel according to Spiritism. So in the Gospel, chapter 11, we read about this inseparable Trinity, which is faith, charity, and hope. We cannot speak about hope without talking first about faith. We will not address charity, which here really means love. But this is an important Trinity that we find in the gospel. So when we look at this small triangle, which is faith, and how it's defined in the gospel, it says, faith means the confidence one has in accomplishing something, the certainty of achieving a particular purpose. It provides a kind of lucidity that enables one to see in thought the end which is intended and the means to reach it, in such a way that the one who possesses it proceeds in a manner of speaking with absolute certainty. So isn't that exactly the same thing that we just watched in the video? So it provides a kind of lucidity that enables one to see in thought what is to become, what is to come. And faith provides us then with this certainty, because it gives us a vision, and we'll talk about it, not a vision, not the narrow vision of the present moment, but what faith does is gives us the vision of the future, the vision of what is not yet here, but it will be, Sincere and true faith is always calm. It provides patience that knows how to wait, because having its point of support in the mind and in the understanding of things, it carries the certainty of arriving at its objective. So another very important statement, it's calm. When you have faith, no matter where you are in your life, you know, you trust. And you do know and you do trust, not because I'm here telling you that you should know and trust, but you have reasons, you have understanding. You trust God and you know why you trust God. You are faithful and you know why you can be faithful. And so faith that has its point of support in the mind and in the understanding of things provides calm and certainty that we will get to our final objective. Not only provides us the means of knowing we'll get there, but provides us the means of knowing how we are going to get there. So I love this statement by Paul in Corinthians when he says, we walk by faith, not by sight. So he writes to the Corinthians, we walk by faith, we're moving forward, we are passionate about our cause, which is Christ's cause. We do the things that we do, we offer the other cheek, we strive to forgive. We wake up each day willing to manifest the things that we have already learned, and we go through the struggles because we have faith in the future. We have faith that this choice will take us to a better place. The choice of following the principles that we have learned about. So faith provides us this ability to see things from a different point of view. Faith is the ability to move forward in life with an extra sense that's not material. It's not your vision, it's not your tactile sensation, but it's that perception, that view of the Spirit that can give you information and certainty, and most importantly, that feeling inside, that trust that everything is going to be okay. Because you rise above and you get a much broader vision of what life truly means and truly is, and why we are living the moment that we are living. So, if going back here, right? So if faith has its point of support in the mind and in the understanding of things, what is it that we need to know and to understand? And most importantly, what is it that the gospel, that the Spiritist doctrine offers us that can be the basis where we build our faith, and that can be the nourishment for our faith, because faith is an ongoing achievement. Like he said in the video, it's something that we develop. And part of the development of faith is feeding our minds with knowledge, with understanding of the laws. And the more that we understand, the more that we go deep into Spiritism and into the teachings of the spirits, suddenly and almost miraculously, we start feeling that no matter what's happening around us, we do not lose anymore our center, because we give the events and the circumstances the importance that they have, no more and no less. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to look into the gospel to see what can we learn from the gospel that will help all of us to live here today with a feeling of hope in the future, and most importantly, hope in humankind. Let's take a look at these scenes, right? So some scenes very recent from our news. So this is Africa. This is the terrorist attacks of Spain. We can cite London. The refugees from the Syrian war. The white supremacists recently here in our neighbor states, right? So when we look at these, and these are very brief, the tiny, tiny little speck of what's going on out in the world today, a lot of times that's how we feel. Anxious, angry, scared, hopeless, powerless, all the above together. Now, the talk of today doesn't mean that we shouldn't give all these events, the importance that they have, we shouldn't be numb or passive or even angry, because it brings anger, and it should bring anger within us. That's not what we'll be talking about. On the contrary, it is extremely important, because we are here for a reason. Although we're going to look at this life from a much higher perspective right now, there is a divine purpose and reason why we're here today. And each one of us has a mission of leaving this planet, making a contribution that this is a better place. And this contribution can and should be political, social, activism, using the right weapons, the weapons of peace, of non-violence, and most importantly, of example. I was talking to a friend at dinner Friday, and it's funny because we were talking about that. She's I would say, grossly speaking, materialistic. She does have some opening, but it's a very vague and uncertain openness to spirituality. So she's very bounded by the present moment and what's happening here right now. And so she was questioning me, like, so, how do we deal with those things? We deal by doing our part. But how is it that we're going to do our part? We cannot do our part lowering ourselves and making ourselves equal in hostility, in violence, in unlove ways, right? So, but those are normal feelings when we watch the news today. So when we look at the gospel, and these are all the chapters we're going to address today, and this is just a small sample of what we can gather from the gospel to build our faith and build our hope in humanity and in the future. So let's start with chapter 2, My Kingdom is Not from This World. In this chapter, what do we learn? We learn the concept of a future life is considered the basis of Christ's teachings. The future life which we present in all circumstances as the goal which humanity must reach and which should constitute man's greatest preoccupation on earth. All right, so the first important concept is there is a future life. By the way, it's the real life. Right? It's the life of the Spirit. This time here is just a temporary, very quick moment where we leave the spiritual realm to take a quick trip to a unhappy country. A third world country, fourth world country. Here we are. But we will go back to our home, to our countries, okay? Now, is the future life your greatest preoccupation on earth? Something to think about, right? How consumed are we with material life? Now, we should be living in the world and enjoying the world, but most importantly, we need to be in the world understanding what is the role of the world for our spiritual enlightenment, as opposed to getting confused and think that this is the end when this is the means. And that's an important difference that we need to make. So, number one, there is a future life which is our real life. Now, I love this passage of the gospel from the same chapter, chapter 2, where it talks about the point of view. So let's see what the spirits teach us in this passage. The clear and precise idea which can be formed of a future life provides an unshakable faith in what is to come. For those who place themselves by means of thought, that's faith, in their spiritual life, which is undefined, bodily life becomes a mere temporary stay in an ungrateful country. The vicissitudes and tribulations of this life become nothing more than incidents which can be supported with patience, as they are known to be of short duration and will be followed by a more amenable state. Do we feel this way? Not too often, probably.
I'm practicing.
You're practicing? Me too. Me too. Yes. Sometimes when we got caught in the anxiety and uneasiness, it's good to open the gospel on chapter 2 and read about the point of view. You know what else it says? Knowing that the place where we find ourselves at the moment is only temporary and not definite, make us pay less attention to the preoccupations of life, resulting in less bitterness and a more peaceful spirit. From the point of view of earthly life, in whose center we place ourselves, everything around us begins to assume vast proportions. The harm that reaches us, as well as the good that touches others, takes on a great importance in our eyes. It is like the man who in the middle of a great city sees everything on a large scale, but who, when looking down from a mountaintop, sees things in only minute form. So, that's an invitation. We know about the future life. When we are going through our troubles and our difficulties and challenges, what is our point of view? How are we approaching things? Right? And sometimes, because we're so stuck in the present and so stuck in our mortality, we give things an incredible importance. They are relatively important, but they're not as important as we think. So work on the point of view, how we approach things, how we see life. But the point of view, in order to change our point of view, we need to do what? Go to the top of the mountain in our thoughts and place ourselves outside of the material realm and think life and the problems as an immortal spirit. That's what it is to climb the mountain, so we can see things from above. It's to look at life from a perspective of immortality. A little exercise of climbing the mountain. The Milky Way galaxy is huge, and these yellow circles are the only stars we are able to see at night. In the Milky Way, which is huge, when we look up and we see, wow, all these infinite stars. Well, they're not infinite. They are little yellow dots of the Milky Way that we can see. But to put things into a higher perspective, there are 200 billion galaxies in the universe that we know of. So then suddenly, our dramas, without wanting to, what's the word? Take away, what is it, Sherry? Diminish or belittle, but again, from a relative perspective, right? From a relative perspective. This is an exercise, right? Things become relative. It shifts. It causes an internal shift when we bring this higher perspective into our days. All right. And so the gospel continues by saying, in place of a short-sighted vision concentrated only on the present, which make this fleeting moment pass on earth, the unique and fragile access of the eternal future. The Spiritism shows us that this life is nothing more than a link in the magnificent, harmonious assembly which is God's work. It also shows us the solidarity which joins together all the different existences of one being, of all beings of the same world, and all beings of all worlds. Isn't life getting a little bigger suddenly? Don't we have this feeling of like expansion, right? Do we remember do we remember on our daily life the magnificent and harmonious assembly, which is God's work? Do we tap into this greater source of harmony to find harmony within ourselves? A lot of times we want to solve things. Nothing wrong with that. We should. But we need to understand that not everything is going to be solved today or in this present life. Because we have lived so many lives, we have so many unfinished content within our souls. There's only so much we can address in this lifetime. And progress is so slow at this point in our evolution, because we'll see we're a little bit of rebel spirits. We fight God sometimes, you know? And so things move slowly, but keep calm, because progress is a law. And no matter what, we will move forward. And no matter what, things will get resolved. But again, put life into a perspective, okay? Sometimes you say, I had a fight with somebody else and I have forgiven that person. I wish we could reconnect, but that person refuses to reconnect with me. Okay. If it doesn't happen in this life, there is another one. You know, do your best. It doesn't mean that you're not going to do your best to try to reconnect. But sometimes we have to respect, because there is a time for everything in the universe. There was a time for us to come to peace. We need to give the person his or her time to come to peace and respect that. And don't be anxious about it, because this is just a fleeting moment. And God will bring the person back to our lives. It might be today, it might be in 10 years, it might be in the next incarnation. It's okay. It's fine. It will get done. All right, so moving forward, let's go to chapter 3. There are many mentions in my Father's house. How do we get hope from this chapter? A chapter that when we study in the gospel, a lot of times people don't put much attention. Why are we talking about this? So we have 7 billion people living on our planet, and we call those 7 billion people the humanity. But the spirits tell us that humanity is all the beings out there across this universe of 200 billion galaxies who have awareness of themselves. This is the humanity. Okay, so what we call humanity, it's not humanity. 7 billion is not humanity. Okay? Now, many are surprised that on earth there is so much badness, so much crude passions, so many miseries, and every kind of sickness. From this they conclude the human species is a very miserable one. This judgment comes from the very narrow point of view of those who emit it, which gives a false idea of the whole. The lecture could also be called the point of view, because no matter where you read, Spiritism shows you a different point of view. And so what the chapter goes to tell us is that this planet that we live in is characterized by spirits who are struggling. And it has a function of a prison for some, of a hospital for others. And it tells us that we do not define a city by the population that's incarcerated or in the hospital having surgery or rehabilitation. This population does not define the population of the city. So we cannot define humanity by looking at ourselves, because that's where we are. We are, you may dislike the idea that you could possibly be in a prison, put yourself in rehab. It's called divine rehab. Okay? So we are all in rehabilitation. All of us, okay, have some pain or soreness, something that needs to be addressed and needs the extra level of care that divine justice provides by sending us here to this beloved planet. So We need to put these glasses in order to help us to see life for what it is. If we have them on, right, just by, in this very beginning, just these very few concepts that I talk about from the gospel, we are already starting to see a little better. We are ready to gain a little bit of clarity. Things were very blurry. But now the fog is dissipating. We have our glasses on, our spiritual glasses, and we're going to start to feel and to think of life from this different perspective. Now, there is no doubt that the world that we live in is what's called a world of atonement. Okay? And what's really interesting is that this world is characterized by a place of exile for those spirits who rebel against the law of God. This is a key sentence. You may be thinking, you gotta be kidding me. I'm not a rebel, right? Who likes to take in this label? But let's just understand, what this means. It's important to understand what the law of God is, right? So the primary law is the law of love. And so many times our attitudes are not in line for many different reasons. For fear, because of low self-esteem, for many different psychological, emotional, spiritual reasons. We go sometimes against what we even know to be the best for us. And so we are spirits who still, in a lot of moments, we will hurt others. We will, I was thinking about it because, I had on those slides of Venezuela, and I had the faces of a few persons who are associated with darkness. And just this morning while I was editing the lecture, I removed those pictures because I thought to myself, number one, they're already in hell. Number two, they're dealing every single day with millions of minds who are hating them, who are projecting towards them their anger, and I do not want to feed into that. This morning, okay, I had the pictures. I had 2 pictures, and I removed them. I caught myself in an act of unloving attitude. Do I still have a problem with what they bring to the world? Yes. Will I fight for justice, for inclusion, for brotherhood? Yes. But Christ told me not to do to others what I would not like to be done to myself. So if I don't want people to send me bad vibrations, and these people too, there's hope for them. Because there's hope for all of us. There's hope for all of us. But the way that we're going to make a difference in the world, the way that we're going to make the world different and a better place is not by joining the negative forces. It's by rising above them and establishing a new paradigm of life. So I said, this is not okay. But we have these impulses. We still have within ourselves. It's a little bit of a self-defense. It's a little bit of an instinctive. It's still a little bit of the animal within us, So you stand against what someone believes and disseminates, but you don't stand against the person. There's a difference, because those persons are my brothers. Whether I like it or not, whether I like it or not, they are just as divine as I am. They're just as worthy of love and forgiveness as I am. And they too will arrive. So I have faith and I have hope, not only in the future, but in them. Because I understand that they are children of God, and I understand that no one will be left behind, no matter who they are. Right? So this is just an example of how if we pay attention, we'll catch ourselves in unloving attitudes that characterizes. And so this happens with the politicians, but this also happens in our relationships, in our everyday relationships, right? We eliminate people because they think differently than us. Someone hurts us, a lot of times we can't forgive, all these little things. All right. So let's go to the Spirit book, Keep Calm and Check Progress. All right, so what do we know about progress? This is still in the gospel. The time has come in which more ideas must be developed to bring about the progress determined by God. They will follow the same route as taken by the ideas of liberty, their predecessor. Do not think, however, that these developments will be effected without a fight. No. In order to reach maturity, these ideas will need discussion and conflicts so that they may attract the attention of the masses. Once this has been achieved, the beauty and sanctity of this morality will touch all spirits, who will in turn embrace a science which will give them the key to a future life and open the doors to eternal happiness. Were the spirits prophets? Were they talking about the 1800s or today? Right? Because this sounds like applies very well to today. So this is such an important concept that you find in the gospel. For ideas to reach maturity, discussion needs to take place. For this discussion to take place, you need opposite views that will engender the discussion. And as the discussion happens, the fight happens, then the masses start to pay attention. Aren't the masses starting to pay attention to what's happening? And different levels of awareness are being raised in our society today. In the 1800s, the Spirit told us that this is how it would be. And he goes on. In the Spirit's book, we also learned that there is a regular slow progress that inevitably results from the force of things. But when a people does not advance quickly enough, God also prepares for it, from time to time, a physical or moral shock that hastens its transformation. I don't know about you, but I'm in a state of moral shock these days. Right? Man cannot remain perpetually in ignorance because he must reach the goal marked out for him by providence. He's gradually enlightened by the force of things. So another important piece of information from the Spirit's book that helps us to understand and to see the present moment from a different point of view. Moral revolutions, like social revolutions, are prepared little by little in the ideas of a people. They go on germinating for centuries, and at length suddenly burst forth, overthrowing the crumbling edifice of the past, which is no longer in harmony with the new wants and new aspirations of the day. It's in the Spirit's book. It's in the Spirit's book. So I don't know about you, but I'm reading and putting this together, and I'm like, oh, this is amazing. This is really amazing and inspiring. And how much hope one cannot get from reading this and understanding. So the problem is that we want to think about life from the perspective of 100 years, when ideas, in order to mature and in order to germinate, take centuries. Not 100 years, 90 years, 80 years that we live here. It's a process. Today we have our ideas. We are going to discarnate. We're going to reincarnate in a world that's going to be better. We're going to bring our values and add to that new generation. And that's how progress takes place. So don't be discouraged from what you're seeing today. I'm going to skip this. How do we understand something like this? Progress is a law of nature. All beings of creation, be they animated or not, have been submitted to this law through the bounty of God, who wishes everything to be exalted and to prosper. Even actual destruction, which appears to men to be the end of everything, is only a means of reaching a more perfect state to transformation, seeing that everything dies only to be reborn again, suffering no consequences from the annihilation. So you can go deep into the Spirit's book and study the law of destruction. You can go into the gospel and learning about renewal. When you read about reincarnation, when you read about God's mercy. Okay? I'm going to skip this because of the time. I want to give you guys time to. And I'm going to finish with these 2 slides. So, is it possible to see the finished harvest? And the answer is yes. And we do that simply by faith. And we do that simply by faith. So in 40 minutes, I have presented to you very, very few points that help us. And I cut a lot of stuff, but very few points that the gospel brings to us, so that you can understand how the knowledge, and if you go in, the texts are a lot more richer and deeper than what I have shared. But the understanding of how God's time, one of the greatest source of anxiety is that we wanted things done at our time. But there is something called God's time. And we have to surrender to God's time. But let me go back to the question. Is it possible to see the finished harvest? What is the finished harvest for us? If not the achievement of a better place within and outside of ourselves. So in the gospel, when we read about the plurality of the worlds, right? We learn that there are better homes waiting for us. We will get to these better places when the world within us becomes also a better place. So we know how to get there. We have hope because we know that progress is a law. It's not about whether we're going to get there or not. It's just about when we are going to get there, all of us. And we know how to get there to these different spheres of life called regeneration worlds. Go to the gospel and read about what characterizes these worlds. So you have a guidance to what you need to accomplish within you in order to be deserving, or perhaps in order to be equipped to enter these realms of life. Okay? But what we know is that in these worlds, humanity is liberated from the ungoverned passions to which we are slaves, free from pride, which silences the heart, envy, which tortures, and hate, which suffocates. On all sides, the word love is written. Perfect equity resides over all social relationships. Everyone recognizes God and tries to travel in His direction by fulfilling His laws. My dear friends, the gospel, according to Spiritism, is a pearl. If you have the eyes to see, the heart open, the mind connected, it's not about getting caught on the words. It's about seeking the deeper meaning of the message and making the connection of the philosophical ideas with each day of our lives. And there is so much hope. There is so much hope. And then you will become a flame of hope in the darkness. And when the world is falling apart around you, and you are still standing straight with your eyes upwards, people are going to ask you, how do you do this? Where do you gather this strength? How can you be so optimistic? I hear all the time, you are so optimistic all the time. Yes, I am. And guess what? I know why I am. Thank you.